And as always, if anyone has any questions at any point in time, please put them in the chat. I'll try to answer them as quick as possible. I don't want anybody getting stuck or anyone getting confused, or if anyone has any questions on just general ideas behind this, we can definitely discuss those things. That's what we're here for. We're here to have everyone learn as much as they possibly can. And honestly, after this, I think a lot of you can probably implement this in some small application right away if you want, because we're going to go from start to actually working with it directly all within the next couple hours. So, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is on this machine is a clean install of Keycloak. If you missed the presentation yesterday about the new Plex patterns, Keycloak is an SSO platform created by Red Hat. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start completely from scratch. So we're going to start it up. We're going to create our admin account. We're going to go into our admin settings, create users, create roles, set all those things up. We have an existing Plex app that we're then going to wrap with that and then start interacting with Keycloak directly in our Plex code. So we'll go ahead and go to page 3 of the document, which is saved on the desktop. A shortcut is anyway. And so we're going to open a command prompt. And so all we need to do is just cd to our Keycloak directory. So me being a lazy person that I am, I always just kind of go and find the directory and copy it. So let's copy the directory location and just open a command line. All right, so once we are here, all we have to do is run the startup bat file. So we need to we need to navigate to the bin directory as well. So I should do bin. Sorry about that. And then we need to start the standalone.conf.bat file. So whoops, did I miss something? Oh, sorry, wrong one. Standalone.bat. Okay. So this is just going to be starting Keycloak up, and from here we're going to be able to connect to our admin account and set all of that up. So once it's all running in the browser, you can just copy this URL. Let me copy. I'm sorry, still starting. Yeah, it takes a minute or two to get started, and I'm always impatient. Okay, there we go. So by going to this auth, we need to create our administrative console now. So all we have to do, and sorry, whoops, wrong thing. So from here, just set up your own username and password. Obviously do something you're going to remember. So let me go to this, and I'll do admin. And I'm not going to say my password out loud. Nice try. And we'll create that account. And I'll save it to the browser because once again, I'm lazy and just don't like remembering passwords. So Keycloak's ready. Now we're able to set everything else up that we need. And so we need to go into our administrative console now. And then we're going to log in. And just so you know, the look of all of these things, the login screen, there's a user self-service portal, everything, all these things are based on theme files, and you can upload whatever custom theme to fit whatever your business needs are. So if you don't like the look, and obviously when you go to production, you probably don't want just to say Keycloak on it, that's easily customizable, and there's lots of documentation on how to do that. Or you could just ask me, because I've done it several times. So. All right, I'll give everybody some time to kind of get caught up. And once again, if anybody has any questions, whether it be a philosophical question about this, or they just have a question about one of the exercises, just please type in chat and I'll answer right away. And also apologies, I've been informed I go quite fast, which is a problem I already knew, but I still cannot fix it. I'm sorry. So I'm going to try to slow down for everybody as well. Yeah, as for the speed of the VM, I find it takes a little bit for them to get warmed up. Like the first 10 minutes I'm connected to one, it's always slow. I got here early this morning, so I've actually been connected for like an hour. That might be why mine's going a little faster. And also, if you are working faster than I'm going, feel free to go ahead and go on ahead. The instructions, I'm just going to be following along the instructions along with everybody. But if you want to start working ahead, feel free, because that's perfectly fine with me. you think I'm good to move on a little more? No, I just always worry that I forgot to include something in the instructions, please. Okay, I hope everyone has at least been able to log into their admin portal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new realm for our Keycloak environment. So this is basically what we're going to use so the master realm in Keycloak is used for basically all the admin stuff. You shouldn't really wrap your applications using the master realm. So we're going to create our own realm to fit whatever our application suite would be. And this can be what you use for all of your applications. But and again, you are able to create as many realms as you might need as well. So creating a realm is quite easy. All you do is hover over right here where it says master, and there's an add realm button. And then you name it whatever you want. So in our case, it's, what do we name it here? Oh, web client, that's right. Just name it web client and click create. All right, and just like that, we have a new realm. And so then from within that realm, I'm going to try to go slow, I promise. We can create clients in there, and each of these clients can also have their own settings. So in the realm, there is automatically some clients like the admin client where you can do administrative work within that realm. But we're going to actually create our own client. So on the left menu, so you can see after we create our realm, we switch to the web client realm. So now any changes we do here is going to just affect the web client realm. And so if you can go to the client menu option, you could see the existing ones, like for example, what I just talked about, the admin client. And so we can just click the create button. And I forget what we had to name it here, Plex SSO. And then we need to save a root URL as well. So just do a little bit of copy pasting here, and you can leave the protocol as OpenID connect as well. All right, and once you have that created, there's a few more settings we're going to make, and I'll explain what they are, but I'm going to make sure I give everyone time. Yes, just to answer kind of how Keycloak is running, we're running it, starting it up manually here with the batch file. But in the production environment, you would set it up as a service that automatically comes on whenever the server comes on. The other thing I get asked about a lot is where does this Keycloak server need to live? It can literally live anywhere in your data center. It could be on a separate machine. It could be on the same machine as your web servers. That's really up to you and how you want to have everything kind of oriented. But Keycloak's pretty agnostic on where it needs to go. You just want it somewhere where everything can quickly access it. So there is one last change we need to make to our client. And so we need to go into the settings. If you scroll down, so we'll clear the admin client URL. We clear the web origins URL. And if you hover over the question mark, it explains kind of what these actually will do. These are kind of CORS settings, which if you don't know what CORS is, you're lucky because CORS is the bane of my existence when writing apps. So the big thing you need to do is change the valid redirect URL. So what this does is this allows Keycloak, this basically sets what sites can use this Keycloak. So what URLs can use this Keycloak. For this, we're just going to set to star. This is a warning. We're doing it for star just because this is a test, we're doing a lab here. But star means that any URL can access this Keycloak. And so in a production environment, you probably do not want to do this because that means any outside thing can try to start hacking your Keycloak. And you obviously do not want that. So what you're going to end up doing in a production environment is have the URLs of your production applications. So you could do, if it's on, whatever.com/this, you can do whatever.com/star, and it'll do everything in that site. So this is just one thing that we're doing just for the lab, but I want to just make sure that I'm being very clear here. You do not want to do this for a production environment. And once you're done, all you got to do, just hit save. And so now our client is ready to go. And again, any questions, please type them in the chat. I know I sound like a broken record and I apologize, but I'm trying to help. Yeah, I know, I'm stopping. Okay, a question about creating a realm. So to create the realm, in the top left corner of your Keycloak admin console, there is the current realm you're in. So if you have not created another realm yet, it will say master. And so when you hover over it, there'll be an add realm button. And so all you do is hover over the word master here in the top left, and then click add realm. And then you can add all the information you need. Let me know if that works for you. Just one other thing. I can't see any direct messages you send to me, Abram Darnutzer, in Zoom. So if you want to send a direct question, send it to the actual Plex 2E user, and then I'll be able to see it. So a question about what all the URLs should look like in your client. It should match what you see on the screen. The root, oh, sorry, I should have actually saved the root URL too. 1 second. Oh, oops, did I say the wrong thing there? 88.1 my app. Okay, sorry, that's weird. I don't know why I did that. Okay, sorry. So your root URL should look like this, and your redirect URL should be just star. And again, just to reiterate, that means when you set that redirect URI, it's going to allow, CORS stands for cross origin resource. It basically is what allows sites to interact with each other. By default, this is blocked for security reasons, obviously. And so what this does is this opens up what URLs are allowed to connect. The thing is when you set the star, that means anything can interact with it. And so for production systems, you do not want this. You want to just put what the sites you're using Keycloak with, and you could list and add as many as you need, and that will prevent outside sources from trying to hack their way in. So it's real important to do that. You okay now? That Lily knows 90% of what I say. Yeah. Do you think I'm okay to? Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next portion. So we have our client created. And so now we're actually going to create a user. So someone who can actually log into the system. So to do that, on the left side of the menu, you can just see the users menu. Go ahead and click that. And by default, it doesn't load any users. It does this because if you have 10,000 users, it just doesn't want to load them. But you can, it's got a very good search feature, or you can do view all users. In this case, we don't have any yet. So let's go ahead and create one. So over here on the right is an add users button. And so I think we name him Jack Smith. Is that right? Yep, Jack Smith. Sorry, I keep trying to alt tab. You can also set up any other information that you might want to pull, like their email, their first name, things like that. We'll have the user enabled, and we'll actually flip email verified to on as well. What this setting is you can set up automated emails when someone registers. So they register, enter their email, you send them a confirmation email, and so that user is not able to log in until they click the confirm link on the email, and that flips their profile to email verified. So this is all stuff that is just built into Keycloak. You do not have to write any extra code for it. And it just gives you the extra layer of security that you need. But for our case, I didn't want to set up an email server, so we're just going to flip them to on. And then all I have to do is save. All right. So at this point, we have our user created, but they don't have a password to sign in. If they went through Keycloak's registration page, all of this stuff would be created normally. But since we're creating this person manually, as admin, we have rights to mess with their credentials in any way that we please. So we can go to the credentials tab for that user and set their password. And you can also set where this password's temporary. So then when the user signs in, they are immediately asked to change their password. Again, all of this is just built into Keycloak just by flipping a switch. So it makes it really easy to do. So I'm just going to set their password to something really easy. And I'm going to turn off temporary because I just want this to be their password, and just do set password. And anytime you do this as an admin, Keycloak goes, are you sure you want to change the person's password? Just because it could be really inconvenient for somebody who is expecting their password to be one thing and it be something else. But in this case, we're just going to go ahead and set that password. So now this person is going to be able to log into Keycloak. All right. And once we have all that, then we'll actually look into actually doing security around this user. So, and again, no, it sound like a broken record again, but if you have any questions or you're running into any problems, just put them in the chat. So temporary turns back on whenever you come back into the screen because Keycloak assumes if I'm going to change the password again, it's going to be a temporary password. So every time you change the password, it's going to try to do it as temporary and you can turn it off. But the password I already set, this setting does not affect that. It's just whatever I reset it again to. Hope that answers the question. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So now we're going to get to the actual security aspect of Keycloak. So Keycloak has a concept of roles and groups. A role is the fine-grained authentication method that Keycloak uses. So all of its security is not based on the user, it's based on what roles the user has access to. So you can assign roles directly to a user, but that is actually not best practice. The best practice is to use a group. A group is just a collection of roles, and then you assign that group, the user to that group. So when you're creating roles, there are three types. There's a realm role, and that's a role that basically is available to every client in the realm. There's a client role, which is obviously just roles available to a specific client. And then there are composite roles, which are roles that reference other roles. I don't really use those very much. So, but primarily we're going to be using realm and client roles in our code. So the first thing we're going to do then is we're going to set up a group. Then after that, we're going to set up a role, assign that role to a group, and then assign the user to the group. So groups are very easy to set up. So on the left side of the screen, if you just go to groups, again, just like users, you can search all these things as well. And we'll just do new. And I forgot, we'll call it basic user. And we'll go ahead and save them for now. We'll come back to them later. So right now, we just have an empty group. The group really is not doing anything. So if you assign that to a user, it really wouldn't make any difference at all at this point. So now we're going to add an actual role. And so to add the roles on the left side of the menu, there is a role setting, and these are going to be realm roles because they are under this realm setting. If you need to do a client role, you'll go under clients, select your client, and then do the roles that way. But in this case, we're just going to do a realm role. And again, we'll do add role. And we can just say, hey, I can never remember what we're supposed to name these. Plex user. So pretty simple stuff here. You can add a description if you want, so to make your administration job easier. But for our case, we're just going to create one called Plex user. Okay, so we have our user and our group. And so now we need to associate those two. So let's go back to the groups menu. And you can see we have our basic user group. And so now we're going to edit. So up on the top, you can see role mappings. So this is all the roles that this is associated to. So these are the available roles, and here's how you would search for client roles as well. But we just want this Plex user role. So all I have to do is select it and click add selected. And so now the basic user group will have the Plex user role associated with it. And that's automatically saved. You don't have to click anything to save. So the last thing we need to do is then add our user to that group that we created. So let's go back to users. Here's Jack Smith. We're going to edit them. And then we'll go groups and just do view basic user and say join it. I don't know why the CSS is so bad here. That's weird. All right. And so now Jack Smith is a part of the basic user. And so now they have access to that Plex user role. And how we actually use that in our application, we're going to get there in a little bit. But just know that we've added that security layer for anything that Keycloak is allowing that's using the Plex user role. Jack Smith will now have access to it. And for those of you who are working pretty quick for the next one, you'll actually on your phone, we're going to set up multi-factor authentication. So you need to go download, like if you don't have an authenticator already on your phone, Google Authenticator is pretty quick and easy to download, and we can use that straight away. Okay, so if I'm gonna start moving on, if anybody's having trouble setting up their roles or their groups, just let me know real quick. If not, okay, so we have a question on page 11. So, okay, on page 11, so there's basically 3 steps to this process again. So under the groups menu is where you're adding the basic user group. We're just creating it by name to start. All right. And then, so once we create it, it's blank. It has nothing in it. So we need to create a role that we're then going to assign to it. So we can go to this roles menu up here and create our new role. And again, we're just naming it. So it's just named Plex user. It doesn't really do much at this point because we're not trying to consume that role. And so then we just need to assign that user to that group. So if we go into our group and edit it, there's a role mapping setting. And here's where you assign that role to this group. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so yeah, once you have your group set up, so now you have this group that's available to assign users to. So we're going to go to our Jack Smith user and assign him to that group. Him or her, I don't know, Jack could be whoever. So we'll go to users, find that user, and click edit. And there's a setting under every user for groups. If you select them, you'll see a list of available groups on the right and groups that they are in. So you could just select it and hit join, and it'll add it to the group membership. Now, does that make sense? All right, glad I could help. Okay, so now at this point, we have a user. And so what we're going to do now is set up multi-factor authentication. And if you have multi-factor authentication available for any website or anything that you use and you don't use it, you're asking to get hacked. It's basically the one basically foolproof way to prevent yourself from getting hacked. And multi-factor authentication is available from within Keycloak with just a simple setting. So before we get started, if you don't already have it on your phone, go ahead and download Google Authenticator and get that ready. And so we're actually then going to sign out of the admin portal and sign into the regular user portal so that user can set up multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out. So up here in the top right, just click your user and then click sign out. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and go to this URL in step 2. Move this out the way. Oh, add the period at the end. Oops, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to choose to sign in. I'm going to sign in as Jack Smith. There we go. Only I could forget a password I made 2 seconds ago. So, okay, and so once you're in, you can now do things as that user. So this is kind of a self-service portal. And again, you could customize the look and what's available for all of this. This is a good way for if a user wants to reset their password or a user wants to change their information, change the email address that they're associated to. This is how they could do it. Okay. So let's go ahead and edit the personal information. Okay, so now here's the point where we actually set up the multi-factor authentication. So if you go to account security, and you go to the signing in setting, and you could do setup authenticator application. So if you click this link, it'll have a nice little barcode. And then just on your phone, oops, scan that QR code. Okay, and should give you a one-time code to verify it. And there you go. Just like that, multi-factor authentication is enabled for that user. And so now you could sign out. And if I choose to sign in again, you'll see it prompts me for the one-time code. So just quick and easy two-factor authentication, and it's done. Once again, any questions? So Eclipse has a bunch of different authenticators looking for different what it makes it should look like that something else is determining it. So sometimes Eclipse will be the errors that you can actually just tell us never something else errors. Yeah, just say that. Yeah, I apologize for Eclipse being slow on the VM. Normally this will go quicker on everybody's really good laptops, but these lab VMs only have so much power. Okay, I think people are starting to kind of get the hang of this, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. Again, if I'm going too fast, just tell me in the chat and I can answer any questions. But now we're going to add another bit of configuration to our Keycloak system. You can, right now, user self-registration is turned off. But if that's something you want to make available, it's very easy to turn on. So you're going to want to sign out of the user account screen and sign back into your admin console. And then once you do that, you can go to the realm settings. And then under the login tab, there's a user registration flag you can turn on. So now I can do that and save it. And then once you do that, let's try going back to this link. We should be signed out. So, all right. So now if I click sign in, you will see that there's a new registration option under there. And you can go ahead and click that and go ahead and enter the user information. And so after you register, you can actually go back to your users tab and do view all users, and you'll see that Tom Long exists. Currently, if you go to edit them though, they are not involved in any groups. So that's kind of more of an admin task. Again, if you have concerns over having to manually do this as an admin, we're going to do this later, but we have in the web client security models, we have ways to do this programmatically. So kind of take the burden off of whoever your help desk is and everything. And then so once you're done with that, we're finally going to test a Plex application. We haven't opened Plex yet, but we're like an hour 10 in and we still haven't opened Plex. That's a new record for a Plex conference workshop, but we're almost there. So if you're finished and ready to go on to the next exercise, I do advise getting a clip started up. So it'll be ready to go when we do the next exercise. Yeah, that one file is in that F, and the other one doesn't. Sorry, it goes in the webinf.lib, the keycloak. No, wait, it doesn't. Never mind, I haven't done it yet. I'm sorry. Give me a sec. So one other thing that the slow VMs might give you is your Tomcat timing out. If it does that, you can just double click on your Tomcat server and change these timeout settings. I mean, I have mine set to 20 seconds, but let me just double those. And the problem is it's just doing it on the first publish. So another way to get around that is you just publish, and once it's synchronized, then it should be able to start pretty easily. All right. Okay, so once everyone's kind of to the point where they can start we have a web client application that we're then going to wrap in our Keycloak instance that we just set up. So on the desktop, there's a shortcut for Eclipse. If you've never used Eclipse, Eclipse works in like a workspace-based environment. So you'll have a path to a workspace that should autocomplete and then click launch. Once that is done, the server should load up. I mean, the Eclipse environment should load up. And within Eclipse, there is a server tab that you can just right click and say to start our web server. So once you have that and it says started and synchronized, that means everything's been published and is running correctly. You just go to the URL that I've listed here, the localhost 8081, my app web client. And you can take in here and you can log in with Abram. There's also admin, no password. I just have it checking the a user table. So here, okay. And you can goof around with this as much as you want. It's just a bunch of like edit screens basically. And you'll just notice here that it says our current user. We're gonna use this later. So once everybody kind of has theirs up and running, and if you have any issues getting your workspace up and running, let me know. Eclipse on right-click servers, all the options, start server. So you have to go to the servers tab, and there should be a Tomcat 9.0 server listed there. That is what you right-click, and there's a start, restart, and debug those options. That's how you start the server. The servers tab is on the bottom of the Eclipse IDE. So on this row down here. If you have something full screened, it's because you double clicked a tab. So you can double click it again to unfull screen it. And so you can find servers down here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and actually try to wrap our application. All of these wrapping steps are actually documented in for Keycloak, so it's basically Tomcat specific steps. If you have another web server, there's documentation for that as well. But since we're using Tomcat, we're going to do this here. So the first thing needed is we need to make a file called context.xml, and where we're going to do that is in the meta-inf folder in our web project. So if you just navigate from my app down source, main, web app, you'll see a meta-inf folder, and you can right-click it and do new file, and just call it context.xml. All right, and so then copy paste this into there. So this is just something that Keycloak needs to work with Tomcat. That's all this is for. Sorry, one moment. Okay, so we have our context.xml created. So the second step is a keycloak.json file, and this is the file that's going to point our application to our Keycloak server. So this is how it knows what Keycloak server to look at. And so to create this, you can do this from the admin console. So if you go to your client and select Plex SSO client, what is it? It's installation, the installation tab. And you could select the Keycloak OIDC JSON, and it'll show you what it is, and you can just click download. So once that file is downloaded, you can just copy paste it. So we're going to copy it, and then where we're going to put it is actually in the web-inf folder of our app. So you can see here, here's web-inf just outside meta-inf, paste in there. And so if you open this file, you can see everything you need to be able to do this. So it's pointing to what realm, what are authentication URL, and what resources we're actually looking at. Okay. Okay, and the final thing we're going to do is actually change our web.xml file. This is also located in the web-inf folder. So just double click it and open it. And I have some XML to copy paste. And I'll explain what this all means in a second. So you can just do it right below here, or really wherever, as long as it's within the web app. And so what this is saying, and I'm sorry it's formatted so poorly. What this is saying is we're pointing to what roles they need to do to be able to access this resource. And so in our case, we want them to have the Plex user role to be able to access anything in our published application. So in this case, we say /star. That means it's literally everything that's published. If you just wanted to do certain directories or certain URLs, you could do it that way instead. But in this case, we want to do everything. So let's go ahead and save those changes. Okay, so now to test, we just need to restart our web server to publish all of the new changes. This works. So the My App folder is the name of your web project. In the left side in the Project Explorer, it should be the first one listed. And that's just what you expand. Part of me is wondering if it's an Eclipse any setting I could do to up the memory it's using, but we'll not worry about that right now. Just know that it is definitely not this slow when you're doing it on your work machine. It should take 10 seconds. Okay, so we're started. So let's go back to our app and let's just go ahead and refresh and try to reconnect again. What should happen is we get forwarded and okay. What should happen is we get forwarded to our Keycloak installation. Why am I missing this? Is there a client setting we're missing for our, is there a client setting why we wouldn't get the Keycloak screen up? Did I forget something? Yeah, I mean, well, because I mean, I'm getting the same thing that James got. Role name, let's see. Yeah, I know. I'm not sure why. I apologize, everyone. I promise we tested this before, but I haven't been able to test them on the VMs because they just got cloned. So something is not quite right. Give me one moment. Of course, that machine is down. Second. All right, and we'll try restarting Chrome then. If that's it, then that's really bizarre. And that is it. Well, all right, Jeremy, thank you. You get the gold star for today. So apparently just restart Chrome. I know people say this a lot during like presentations when they go wrong. I've literally never seen it do that before. So that's really strange. So you can think I'm lying or not, it's fine, but I literally have never seen that be an issue before. Okay, let me try to get back to where I was. Okay. Okay, so from here, if you try to actually log in with Tom Long, because they are not part of the group, you're actually going to get an error. It's going to say you're not allowed, you're forbidden. Oh, that's why, because we were still logged on as Tom Long. That is why. Okay, that makes sense. We are still logged on as a user who did not have access. So let's close Chrome again, just to get rid of that session token. And we'll go back. And this time we're going to log on to somebody who does have access. In this case, Jack Smith. And let's sign in. And oops, I got to enter my one-time password. And that should let us in. And there we go. All right, thank you. Oh, Shane gets credit? Okay. Well, y'all can argue over who gets credit. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But thank you. Sorry about that. Makes sense, though. We were trying to sign in. Oh, but that actually does bring up a good point. That error screen is really generic and terrible. But in your web XML, you can actually point different error codes to do different screens. So in production environments in the past, if somebody tries to access something they don't have access to, I forward them to a page that I created that one looks better and two better explains what's going on. So that is something you can easily configure. Okay, so who are you trying to sign in? I mean, because the fact it's not prompting you to sign in. It's like, it's definitely in the hash index code. Yeah, you can try. Yeah. Yeah, try on Firefox, that doesn't work. Microsoft does. So actually other settings that we don't really show in here though, you can set token timers like what the valid length of time they are, idle timers, things like that to auto log out. And then also from within Keycloak, they have easy Java APIs to log people out and cancel tokens as well. So all these things can easily be added to your application. So I'll give everyone a minute to get caught up, and I apologize for the trouble. It wouldn't be a workshop if I didn't do something wrong. So it's not like trigger the like from there any access people should just no, that's your this point. Can you just try to why don't you try turning off that required as well? So you do access as well. Try turning that off and just seeing what we get. Yeah, so just to really the first thing that is just look at something. Okay, so there's one more admin item that we're going to go ahead and do. And if we go to the, here, let me go to localhost 88/auth. And from there, we can go to the admin console. So we'll log back in as the admin. And so right now we have, multi-factor authentication set up on a per user basis. But if you want to require everyone to use it, you can go click on the authentication item on the left side. And there's a bunch of options here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to find the I can't read the conditional OTP and set it to required. And so now this will require any new user to actually use the multi-factor authentication. Okay. And once we're done here, we'll start actually making our actual Plex app run better. And surprise, we're actually going to open Plex and actually do some Plex coding. When we get it all in time. Should be able to do copy documentation should be actually follow the same steps. David, I do not know about that error. I'd have to be able to see your screen. So does the context.xml have the properly formatted XML pasted into it? That'd be the only thing I could think of that'd be causing a problem. Yeah, just make sure there's not like, I don't know, weird characters, trailing spaces. I mean, these are just things that can sometimes catch you out. And also, I apologize, the PDF, like the way it formats some of the text, it tries to stick a period on the end of something when you copy paste it. It's just a bit of a pain. So that's the one problem with writing these instructions out. Yes, that looks correct, David. No, this is purely yeah, I actually put that one up. So the whole point is I was just trying to do like an old-fashioned authentication setup. Okay, so I think we're actually ready to start coding and starting to really use Keycloak properly with our Plex application. Because at this point, Keycloak is acting as our gatekeeper to get into the app, but we're not using it to validate who they are at all at this point, because we're still forcing them to go into the login screen. still forced to log in as Abram and do that. Well, we don't want to do that. So now we're going to actually make use of the built-in Java and Keycloak and then web client security model APIs that are included to make this a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to go and open our Plex model. You can find this in the conference workshops folder under local models. I tried to organize everything as best I could. So we're going to find a function called users.login, and we're going to go ahead and just open the action diagram for it. So, okay. And so I'm going to try to do a bunch of stuff so you can copy paste. But so the first thing we're going to do is at the end of the initialize, instead of actually going to the screen and having them log in, we're just going to go get some Keycloak token information. So we're going to make an API call. So just go and copy that code. We'll go to the end of the initialize and paste that in. Oops, again, it put an extra character on the end. And so the other thing we're going to do is we're going to map the local user ID field into it. Okay, so now this is going to go get it and it's going to put it into the local user ID field. So this is the actual user ID associated with that token. So now what we want to do is go ahead and log them in. Oops. Log them in with that. So we just need to do a go sub save user log save login user. This just and you can go into this code and see what it does. Again, I didn't write anything too complicated here. And so you can see by going into here, this just takes the oh wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. We need to set our detail-p user ID. So set equal to, sorry, local user ID. I typed wrong there. Oh, I think we have to, sorry, we have to cast. My fault. Again, Plex field domains coming back to bite me. So this subroutine just then saves the login user to memory so other functions can access it. And then the last thing we'll do is go ahead and call our menu. Oops. Okay, and so that's all the code that we need really. So this is just going to extract the actual information and we're going to save it to memory for us to use later. And so now we just open our gen and build window and all we need to do is generate our login function. You don't need to build it. Eclipse is going to do the building for you. And so to make Eclipse aware of it, all you got to do is right click your Java project and do refresh. And you should see a build kick off and web client will then build the screen. And so now that's done. All we got to do then is go ahead and test. So to test, just restart your web server and we'll test again. And this time when you sign in, it should just take you straight to the menu. Well, good. Now you can quickly catch up. Okay. Also, sometimes, and I've noticed this with certain versions of Eclipse and some versions of Tomcat, when you say restart, it actually doesn't restart, it just stops it. So you might have to do it again. Annoying, I know, but I it has nothing to do with web client. It's just how Tomcat, this Eclipse version is interfacing with that version of Tomcat. I don't know. Click on page 25. So when you log in on page 25, you want to use Jack Smith. So right now, Jack Smith is the only person configured to do everything. So that's generally who we're going to use. And again, I just want to point out that the web client security APIs the ones that are currently available is not all that is possible. It's just the ones that fit what current customer need is. So again, if this is something you really want to try to work with and implement, and you have some other different situations that you need APIs for, they can easily be created and added to a model just to make interfacing with it a lot easier. Okay, so our server is restarted, and now when I refresh, it actually should keep my token from before, so it should know me as Jack Smith. Let's see what it does. Okay, actually, sorry, not even Jack Smith. We used a different API. So we use not get username, we use get user ID. And if you go and look in the Keycloak profile, this is actually the user's ID surrogate. So this is what is actually going to be returned by that. And so that's what we use to log them in. Obviously, that's not ideal because that is not what's going to interface with your current user security table, or at least the current user security table that we have. But we're gonna fix that. Don't worry. So if you want to goof around, you can actually change the API being called to get username, and you'll see a difference there. You'll be able to see the user's actual username, Jack Smith. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, please just let me know. I will answer them as best I can. And our next one will actually, so with these, I'd like to show kind of instances where it kind of works, but doesn't exactly fit our needs. And we're slowly going to get closer to our actual solution. And we're going to get to our actual solution next. Okay, so for our solution, we have an existing user security table and existing user security based on those usernames and everything. but we want to use Keycloak, and we want to have those two communicate with each other. So basically, you want to create a cross-reference. And an easy way to do that is by using Keycloak attributes. An attribute is any key value pair you want to add to a user profile. The actual user themselves cannot edit this. This is purely an administrative thing. And just because you create an attribute does not mean they could be programmatically fetched in the Java code. So we're going to be creating something called a mapper, which is going to add anything with a mapper can then be added to the actual token and then be read by our Java code. So the first thing we're going to do is go into the admin console. And then which one is it? Okay. So we need to go to our clients tab and go to our Plex SSO client. And there's going to be a mappers section here. And all we got to do is create a mapper. And you'll see there's lots of different options here. And so we want to set the mapper type to mapping a user attribute. There we go, user attribute. And we'll name it. And so then we need to define what the actual user attribute we're going to be passing along is. So we'll just name it user ID. And then we need to set its claim type to a string because we want to just return the string value of it. And so you can see here, if you want to add it to the access token or anything like that, or add to different aspects. So we'll just leave those set as default. Click OK. So now we need to go set up the attribute. So let's actually go. All right, so let's go back. And let's go to our users. And let's find our old buddy Jack Smith. And so you'll see under Jack Smith, there is an attribute tab. And now we can add whatever we want. So I think I can do. So I'm going to set a user that's not me, so you can see it. I'll do Billy. So set user ID and then Billy. And click add. And so now this attribute, because there's a mapper that already exists for it, will be a part of our token that's being passed on. So now we want to change our Plex code. Instead of reading the user ID from the token, we want to go get the attribute from the token. Okay, so let's go back to our user login. And do a little copy pasting here. And so go back to our user login function. And let's overwrite that API. And of course, I copied characters I didn't mean to. Apologies. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to say what attribute we want to check. I already have a value selected for you, so we'll just say user ID. Did I do that case sensitive wrong? Hold on. Let me make sure about something. Yeah, I think I did do that wrong. I think I need to do it as user ID. So these things can be case sensitive, so I'm just going to be safe here. And so I'll go back to my client as well and check the mapper. Okay, so that's all saved. So I'm just trying to cover my bases, make sure everything works. So we'll pass in that local user ID, and then we have our attribute value. And so again, I just have a local field called attribute value that I'll pass in. And so this, when it's done, will be set with whatever that attribute was. So now from here, it's just regular Plex code. So we just need to get that value into our user ID field. So we need to cast attribute value into that detail P user ID again. And there we go. And so now our coding is done. So all we got to do again is just generate, and we're going to test. So our generation's done. Let's just refresh our Java project so it knows about the new Java source. That'll kick off the Java build and also the web client template build. And then I'll stop my server and then restart it. Well, what it is actually it's workspace that has multiple and basically it's designed basically this will focus on those boxes. So all these so basically that's yeah. Yeah, it's essentially it looks to recognize it necessary. There are other setups that you can do as well. That one's just the simplest one to set up real quick. Yep. Okay, so one thing that you might need to look for, and we'll see if it happens for me. One thing that you might need to look for is the token being saved but not having the new attributes. So if that happens to you, then I'll show you what you can do there. Next, let me start VS Code. Did not mean to do that. All right, yeah, you could see that it comes back as blank because it's trying to fetch something that's not necessarily there. So let me open an incognito window. So to do that in Chrome, all you got to do is go here. And what this does is this is not using any saved cookies or anything like that. So this is a good way to kind of test caching and things like that. So let me sign out as Jack Smith. Hopefully it'll give me the answer I'm looking for. Okay, so I did something wrong. Let me see. So it's looking for user ID. When did I set up wrong in Keycloak? So I'm going back and I'm just going to check my mappers, make sure that looks okay. It does look okay. Let's check my users. If not, I'll just start back over. Be okay. User ID is Billy. Yeah. All right, so let's just start over. Oh, that's my fault. I forgot to put a token claim name. So you can actually have the attribute's actual name be different than what is claimed as in the token. So yeah, my fault. I didn't mention to do that. All right, so now I have all that set up. Now if I restart, hopefully it'll, yep, there we go. Everything works now. So you can see here, it's actually literally just going to be pulling that attribute from our token. Sure, yep. So pretty simple there. I'm just hard coding what attribute name I want. You can do this in any way you want. If you want to format message stuff in, whatever you need. And it's just going to pass it to a local field, which I then cast into my user ID field. So everything was kind of created with very generic fields in mind. So it's where things can kind of be cast around. So also, these user attributes can be used to store just about anything you could think of. So if there's other things that you want to hold on to, that is something you can easily set up with Keycloak. So if at any point you forget Jack Smith's password, as the admin, you could go back and reset it in any way you want. So that's the one nice thing about being the admin, is you can go into the users setting, find Jack Smith, and just under credentials, reset their password, turn the temporary off, so you could set to be whatever you want. So easy fix. Just don't forget your admin password. That's the one bad thing. Shane, did you get what you needed? Okay, so we've shown kind of how to link the kind of cross-reference your existing user tables to the Keycloak user registry, but there's other things you can do that's already built into the security system. So you saw in our web XML that we required, I'm sorry, wrong thing. In web XML, we require anyone reaching our app to be part of the Plex user role. So their group has to have access to that. But we're also able to programmatically check stuff too. So Keycloak itself is not going to do the access denial. We are. We can then go fetch to see if someone's part of a role. And if they aren't, then we just boot them out. So this is very similar to a lot of normal Plex security code, except our source of truth is now the Keycloak server rather than whatever data tables we set up. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So we're going to go ahead and create another new role called user admin. And then we're going to create a user group that's going to contain that role. So again, you just go to roles, add a role, user admin. Okay. And so then we go to groups, create a group, user admin. Again, I'm not very creative with the naming, sorry. And so then to link the two, you just go to the role mappings and you just add user admin as part of the assigned roles of the group. And so now our group is completely set up. So now we're going to add Plex code to check for this to allow someone into a function. Okay, so to do that, we're going to go into our users.edit screen. So someone's not going to be able to get in here at all unless they're part of this. And so I have some nice copy paste code for you. So we'll go into users edit. And let's go ahead and do this like at the very beginning of initialize, because I don't want to run any code if someone is not allowed to do this. And so we're just going to preset some fields. So I'm going to say what the actual name of the group they're supposed to be a part of is. And then also set what the actual client I want to load from is. So the naming is a little different than what it is in the admin console, but this is more of like an internal naming based on how Keycloak does it. That's why we named it this way. So then we're going to do an API call to one of our new source code objects, and it's just going to check if they are allowed to get in and return a yes or no. And so we just need to pass in our local, here, I'll auto map local into here. And to default mapping. And you can see we have a local yes, no, and that's going to be our driver whether we kick them out or not. And then this is telling it where to look and what to look for. And so from there, really simple code. Just say, if it's not yes, let's send them a message and then boot them. So okay, so we're done coding. Let's go ahead and generate and test. And you'll notice that we did not assign our user to this group yet. So initially, when we go in as Jack Smith, we're not going to be able to reach that edit screen. And we should see that pop-up message saying that something is wrong or we're not allowed to get in there. Yeah, the 403 forbidden, it's usually because either your context.xml is not set up correctly, or you're trying to log, or you're still like using a token for a user that is not allowed to get into there. So another way to test that is to open an incognito window, which should force you to log in as a new user. If you still get the error, then it's probably that your context.xml is not right. I'm sorry, Bruno, I can't help you right now. Okay, so my Tomcat finally restarted. And so let's go in. And again, it should remember us as Jack Smith, should auto log us in and take us straight to the menu. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to try to access the user function. And I guess I didn't time it to where, sorry, the thing closed before it showed the pop-up message, but you can see it's not allowing you in there. Sorry, there's other timing-based things I could do to make that message show up, but I did too simple a code this time. But you can see I'm not being allowed in as that user. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let's go into our user for Jack Smith and assign him to that user admin group. Okay, and I'm gonna refresh. I don't think I need to log out, but let's make sure. So I'm gonna refresh. Yep, okay, so I am gonna need to log out. Okay, so easy way to test this again is if you open an incognito window, and I'll log in as Jack Smith again. So what happens there is the token itself is still active from before, but it doesn't go and try to pick up the new groups right away. It'll do it the next time you log in. So you need to log out and then log in. Or maybe I did something wrong. Maybe that's why. User admin. Do I need a mapper for that as well? Does I skip a step? Create the group, Plex changes. Okay, assign a user. Okay, let me make sure here. I'm gonna make sure my user's assigned to that group, and they are. And I'm literally gonna kill every session. So if you go to the sessions tab under users, you can find all of the current sessions available for that and just log them completely out. So let's try that again. Come into here. There we go. And we'll log in as Jack Smith. Put in my one-time code. Of course, it switches right as I'm doing it. All right. Nope, I coded something wrong. Okay. User admin. Plex SSO. Looks like I'm gonna have to debug it. So let me restart my server and debug. Hmm? Well, that's the build. So the build shouldn't actually be beyond the build. It's generic. Yeah, the build actually is going to be completely different. Okay, so you are actually going to get to see me debug. What a great treat for all of you. Okay, so let's just see what all I've got set. User admin. Okay. Plex SSO. And so it's just going to be no. Yeah, it is. Okay, so I did something wrong there. Yeah, mapper. Let's see if that was it. I may have forgot to set up a mapper for that, so that would be included in the token. And if that's the case, my fault, and I will walk through what I did there. So the most difficult part of these workshops, pull back the curtain, is I do all the stuff to make sure it works, and then I systematically undo it for the instructions, and sometimes I forget things to add in instructions. All right, let's test to see if my changes worked. I did not. I'm doing wrong. Oh, at least I got some errors now. Yep, that wasn't what I needed. So I'm curious, is everyone else seeing the same issue, or is it something that I just made a mistake typing? I'm trying to figure that out. Okay, so it is something I messed up in the instructions. For that, I thoroughly apologize. I'll need to look at that later, and I can, if this is something that someone really wants to see, we can. Huh. I'm gonna try something real quick. Let's get rid of that, because that obviously did not work. Okay, so essentially what I did is I create a client role instead of a realm role, and we'll see if that's gonna behave a little bit better for us. And it did. Okay. I apologize, y'all. I said something wrong. So typically when with like roles that you're going to use programmatically, you want to create them as a client role and not a realm role. So assigning, okay, so I'll go through the steps that I did there. And so you can leave what you did before and we'll just edit. So what you need to do is you need to go to our Plex SSO client, and then you can go to roles, and this will create roles specifically for that client. So this is how you create client roles. So just create them as a user admin. And so once you have that created, you can go into your group, a user admin group, and edit that. And in the role mappings, instead of using these realm roles, what you can do is select our client and then find the client roles that are available and assign that to the group. And so that automatically gets added to your token, and then you can easily pull from that. I apologize, I just skipped over one extra step you had to do in the setup. So why don't everybody try that? And if somebody wants to give me a thumbs up or whatever in the chat when somebody gets it working, just let me know, okay? Again, apologies, sorry about that. Okay, good. I got confirmation that worked. All right. Again, sorry, bad instructions on my part. Y'all can give me a 1-star review all you want. I deserve it. Okay. So, but what you can kind of see here is this is a really good example of, adding functional security, but using Keycloak as the source of information for that. So the last thing we're going to do today is the actual Keycloak admin items. Typically, right now, this is currently written in the idea of a registration site where you have code that has the user authenticate, log into Keycloak, do some other authentications, and then use that authentication to dynamically add attributes or add them to a group or things like that. So that is typically kind of the idea here. If you need to do it from a more just I'm the admin and I need to go find all the users way, we could certainly write something to do that, but that's just not the idea behind this set of admin code. So what we're going to do here is we just need to make some configuration file changes to have our all of our admin information to where we can then just pull from that in our code. So in our properties file there, which is in the properties folder. So the obclient.properties file is your properties file for Java. So if you expand my app Java, there's a folder called properties and you can find it right there. And so all you have to do is then just anywhere, you can put it at the bottom, the top, doesn't really matter. Paste that code in, and then, oh man, what did I do the password? Oh, I think I remember now. Put your, and see, y'all tricked me. I just showed y'all my admin password. Or put that information in. And so what's going to happen is the APIs are going to use this for initializing a Keycloak interface that allows all these admin items to work. There's also some built-in jars that are needed to do this, but I've auto-included them in the workspace, and all of that's in our documentation for the web client security model anyway, so pretty easy to set up. So the last thing you have to do, and this is because of ways that Jaywalk and Tomcat have to kind of communicate and work together, is for some of these items, you actually have to run them as a servlet that aren't really exposed as a URL externally, but they're really, well, they are, but they can't get the information they need to work if you try to do it through the browser. So we set them up as a servlet that is then just triggered dynamically from the actual Java code and uses your Java session storage to pull information. So it's secure because as somebody from the web is not going to have a session where they can set that information. So we're going to take that and go to our web XML and copy paste. Copy paste is our best friend. Okay, and so that's all you have to do to have your workspace really set up. And so we're going to be making changes to a function called user admin. Let's go ahead and look at this function real quick. It's a pretty, that's not my Tomcat. Oh, did I turn that off? Let me see. It should be calling it. Let me make sure it's there. Yeah, it's there. What's it not calling? Well, we'll see in a second because we're gonna mess with it anyway. Okay, so if you look at this panel, you'll when it's running, you'll see that we're loading a grid of all the users, and we'll be setting the there's an admin checkbox that's gonna like add or remove us from the admin group and role setup. So we're going to be adding code to kind of toggle these things, and then also to dynamically set the user ID attribute as well. So here's our function. So let's go into the actual action diagram for it. And I have a subroutine called check app auth, and we're going to just do some copy pasting here. So again, this is doing this is doing very similar code to what we did in the user edit screen where we're securing it. But with this, we're not actually kicking them out at all. We're just using it to decide whether we're checking that checkbox or not. And so that's very similar code to what we did in the previous exercise. So we could stop and test this if we want. Since it's getting late, I'm sure people are starting to get hungry for lunch. We'll test all these at the same time. So there's also a part 2 of the changes. And so we have an event called make user. So this is going to set our attributes, whatever user is currently selected in the grid. So let's go into that event. Currently, there's no code in there. And we have some stuff, some lovely copy pasting as well. So we're just going to look at every selected row in the grid. Then we're going to get it. And then we're going to do this, use the set attribute. API that we have. Okay, so that's going to take care of all that for us. And so we can also test that if we want as well. And you'll be able to check this when we actually do test it in the actual admin screen. You'll be able to see that change. And also see it on the home screen as well. All right, so the last thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to add an ability to toggle whether the person's in the admin group or not. And so I already have an event called toggle admin as well. And so let's just start copy pasting code again. Sorry for all the copy pasting, but I really feel like y'all probably didn't want to write it by hand. So we're just going to call another API that we include in the web client security group model. That's just going to, we just need to tell it what group we're adding or removing them from. And then that will take care of it. So if they're already an admin, then we're going to remove them. And if they are not, so we're mapping local for all of these, by the way. I made sure to put every field we needed in the local context. Oh, and sorry, the spacing got messed up. The put is obviously outside the if else, so you'll always put the value. Okay, so we've actually made our 3 changes. So the first thing we're going to do is initialize that checkbox if they are an admin or not. The second thing we'll do is have the ability to edit their attributes. And then the last thing we'll do is be able to add and remove them from that group. So let's go ahead and actually test all these things. So let's go in and let's generate our admin screen. And I'll go ahead and generate the menu screen as well, just to make sure it's calling it properly. And just as we have several times before, we'll refresh. Eclipse will do the build, web client will take over, and then we'll need to restart our Tomcat server. I forgot the put at the end, did I really? Which part? Oh, you're at it. No, wait, no, I think I formatted because there's a put after that. Oh, no, I did. Dang, you're right. See, I'm looking like an amateur up here. Come on. Oh, yeah, I just forgot to copy it. You got me there. Should have messed with the Plex any files. I mean, the Plex any files before we sent them. I think it'll take this long. Okay, so let's go ahead and test. So let's refresh. Oops, sorry, that's trying to load the old session. Okay, so let's go to the admin screen. Okay, so right now we are considered an admin because our current Keycloak user is an admin. But let's actually make our user. So set us to Frank Dukes. And so let's go back to our user and let's look at Jack Smith and let's look at his attributes. And you can see it's automatically been updated. So all these things can be programmatically set. So a self-registration page is, again, the original intent. But if we wanted to write something that looked at every user in your current user table and then dynamically create those things, that can easily be done as well. We just need some kind of systematic way to look at it. So let's go and test the other things. So our first bit where we're loading whether they're an admin or not is already working. But let's go and toggle if they're an admin or not. And here we'll go into that user's groups just so you can kind of see. So right now it's basic user and admin user, they're in both. And so let's toggle them. And so let's refresh in here. And you can see they've been removed from admin user. And let's toggle them back on. And you can see they've been added back. So these are all things that you can easily do. So to give you an idea of the scope of like a registration page of how it could look, and this is just an example of how I did it for one customer, was we have a registration page. When you initially register, you're put in a user group called new user, and you're only allowed, that new user is only allowed to go to this registration page. And in the registration page, I say, do you have an existing user with our application? And if they say yes, then I have them log in and I do the same validation that was done in the existing Plex application. And if that checks out, then I know, okay, this person is who they say they are. And so then I can dynamically set an attribute to link that user ID with this Keycloak profile. And then I can also now take them out of the new registering group, so they can't go back in the registration page, and put them in the user group they need to access my app. And it's just in one step, like one actual step by the user, they're now all set up to use the Keycloak in my application. So that's just one example. And there's, I mean, really as many as you could think of, different orientations of how you can do this. And Keycloak is very customizable. And so really sky's the limit on what you can think of in kind of security and kind of like whatever your security orientation should be. So yeah, we have about 15 minutes left in our time slot. Again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. These servers will be up for another, I think, 10 hours. If you need them for any reason to be open longer, please send me an email. If you just want to copy the information off that machine, please feel free to do so. If you don't want to do that or you forget to later and you want it later, just email me, Abram Darnutzer at cmfirstgroup.com. I can get you all the information you need. And really, this is all something that you could implement. As you can see, we've implemented from scratch in 2 hours in a workshop. You know, even with me having one step being wrong in one of the instructions, we're able to get all this working. So this is something, and even a base level of security, you can get up and running very quickly. So thank you, everyone. And again, thank you for attending the conference. I always enjoy all of these things every year and a half. So thank you again for coming. And if there are any questions or any notes or anything, please don't hesitate to either put it in chat or contact me later. And also a big thank you to Loli for helping put this together as well. So really thank you, everyone. And we'll keep this going for like 10 more minutes, I think. Thanks.